Hello and good day to you. This is Tracy Harrison from the School of Applied Functional Medicine. Today we're going to be talking about the necessity, but the challenge of changing our diets as human beings. It's something that we all have undoubtedly tried to do at various times. Maybe we succeeded. Maybe, which is often the challenge, we succeeded for a period of time, maybe a week, a month, a year, but then found ourselves migrating back to old habits, old cultural norms for a variety of reasons. But today we're going to be talking about the non-negotiable aspect of reversing disease dynamics in so many of our chronic disease epidemics and establishing brand new health foundations. And the fact that diet is an essential component of that. There's no getting around it. We see over and over and over again that we can implement so many different lifestyle changes in support of reversing the biochemistry or the physiology of different disease dynamics. But in no scenario is the diet separate from that. Food fuels us on many, many levels. Most of you, I'm sure, are really quite savvy on the interconnectedness of lifestyle choices and circumstances and how they contribute to so many of the prominent disease dynamics that promote the epidemics we wrestle with today, whether it's type 2 diabetes or atherosclerosis, autoimmune disease, and other profiles of immune hypervigilance like asthma and chronic allergy. All of these types of things are highly mediated by our lifestyle and especially about our diet. And indeed, research over the past 2 to 3 decades has helped us to understand that food is not just about calories, for sure. And hopefully thankfully, we started to move beyond some of the old myths that food is just about getting enough calories into the body, which is true, and that is essential. But we've moved beyond the calorie threshold of food importance. We went through a long period where we were focusing primarily on macronutrients, right? It's all about the fat, low fat, low fat. That's how you get healthy, right? And now, no, it's all about the carbs. So it's actually all about the net carbs. It's actually all about the sugar. No, wait, fiber is also important as well. These are all sort of important characteristics of a healthy diet, but we have to move beyond that, even beyond the macronutrients and the endless debates about what the perfect way of eating is, which really highlights just that there is no perfect way of eating. We're all bio-individual, and based on our genetics and our lifestyles, a given diet is going to work better for us as unique individuals than others. But we've got to move beyond the macronutrients to start to talk about the micronutrients, right? The vitamins, the minerals, the essential fats, the specific amino acid makeups of the proteins that we consume. And yes, perhaps most importantly, the phytonutrients. These are substances that are found in plant foods, especially vegetables and fruits, but they are found, they are numerous in plant foods. We talk about the importance of vitamins and minerals, which is really key. If I look at, say, an apple, and I could easily point out that there's a dozen minerals in there. There's a handful of vitamins. These micronutrients are important, but there are literally hundreds of phytonutrients in an apple that make up a rich diversity of biochemicals that the plant uses for its own survival, whether it's about serving as an antioxidant internal to the plant. Maybe it helps provide protection against environmental threats like different types of mold or maybe insects, other bacterial infections that might threaten the plant or help it to live in extreme seasonal environments. These are substances that convey biochemical advantages to the plant, and we've learned over time that they convey similar or synergistic benefits to us. And in this sense, if we want to thrive, there's really no substitute for having a nutrient-dense diet. It's not just about the calories. It's not just about the macronutrients, right? The right amount of fat or the right amount of carbs. It's about having a nutrient-dense diet. And while we can learn about the different nuances that can best support individuals through the functional lens, we know to think of things like gluten sensitivity in people with chronic autoimmune disease, or nightshade vegetable sensitivity in people with arthritis. These types of specific food considerations. But for the vast majority of the people we're working with, regardless of the diagnoses they have or the particular disease dynamics that are at play, our challenge as practitioners is to help the unique individual who is our patient or client in order to make sustainable dietary change. And so it's absolutely non-negotiable that all of those micronutrients are feeding our biochemistry. Food is literally the one thing we do besides breathing for oxygen and drinking water. That literally is the raw ingredients that are about healing our tissues, supporting our cellular biochemical requirements. We need to remember that biochemistry runs on micronutrients. It runs on vitamin B6 and zinc and folate and molybdenum and manganese, and is regulated by things like essential omega-3 fatty acids. And then if we want to have optimal biochemistry, these are not optional things. As I so often joke about, but it really resonates with my own clients, we don't have a pantry of nutrients in our left butt cheek that our body can just go to select a little bit more zinc or a little bit more tryptophan or a little bit more vitamin A off of the shelf somewhere in our body if we are deficient. Food is non-negotiable. We have to get these required and essential nutrients that the body needs in order to thrive. And in this way, food can represent a lot of things to a lot of different people. Food can represent pleasure. Food can represent indulgence and freedom. Food can represent connection, ritual, manifestation of memories and meaningful experiences in life. All sorts of associations that we have with food, because it's something we all do, hopefully every day of our lives. But food, more than anything, needs to be nutrient fuel for the body. And this is where education of our patients and clients is so essential. Because simply telling someone to go eat a healthy diet, to improve their diet, the average person is really going to struggle to know where to begin and know what changes to make in a step-by-step progressive way that's actually going to allow them to be successful, and even more importantly, to sustain the changes that they make. Beyond the micronutrients, it's also true that food is information for our body, and in particular the proteins that we are taking into our body, we know have epigenetic changes to our genome activation. This is changing, obviously not changing our immediate genome, but changing the way our particular genes are actually being activated. As we've spoken in prior Facebook Lives, we're born with the genes that we have, but we're really largely living our way into the activation of that genome, and that specific foods turn certain genes off and on. And this is where we can find the epigenetic influence of foods. We can find an awful lot of the dynamics that either promote resilient health that naturally propels disease, or further propagate functional imbalances throughout all of the systems in the body that eventually turn into symptoms, turn into worsening symptoms, and eventually become severe enough to be diagnosable as some chronic disease. And so food matters, but let's dive into why is it hard? I'm sure you could all make a long, lengthy list, and something that we love doing here at SAFM is not just teaching about the science, but giving practitioners as many tools and tips and insights as we can to help them actually practically apply what they have learned about functional medicine interconnectedness with regard to disease. And so we have to consider the fact that people are overwhelmed with the notion of dietary change for many different reasons. And I want to dive into some of the top reasons, but I actually want to begin with the premise that might surprise you and why it's especially a bad idea to just recommend in a general way, hey, you should really try to eat a healthier diet. I mean, what the heck does that mean, right? If you Google it, you only get a million page hits. And of course, people don't agree on what a healthy diet is. There's probably no more argued, debated topic in the healthy public social media arena than the topic healthy diet. But here's the thing, this has actually been studied, and would you believe that out of a random sampling of just people in the public at large, over 75% of people believe they are eating a healthy diet. And so there's no bigger barrier to making a choice to change your habits than simply not believing that you need to. There's an astounding discrepancy between the less than 25% of people who are actually consuming, even on a short-term basis, a healthy diet by a variety of yardsticks, as opposed to people who assume they are. And this is where, again, education is really essential. And I love, by the way, teaching clients and patients what a healthy meal might look like through the use of pictures. It's really easy to take pictures of plates and to share them. It's a really fun thing to do in a community exchange platform, maybe in a group workshop or in a bulletin board that's associated with your practice. Show us your healthy meal and tell us why you think it's healthy. People may hesitate to submit things in words, and it can be hard for people to relate to things like portion sizes when you talk about cups and ounces and tablespoons, but people can relate to what a plate looks like, right? And it's an easy way to convey things like portion size, the relative makeup of a meal in terms of percentage, maybe of vegetables or percentage of a protein, and this type of thing. But we have to educate and we have to make them aware, because more people than not, at least here in the United States, believe that they are eating a healthy diet and that can't possibly be perhaps part of their health challenge. And so we have to counter that mistaken assumption in order to open the pathway to change. But across the thousands of people that a typical practitioner would support, there's a lot of sharing of pitfalls and missteps and hurdles. And here at SAFM, we've learned over the past decade that there are 5 key barriers to people making sustainable dietary change. And I want to review those with you right now so that they're top of mind for you. The first one is people assume that a healthy diet is going to taste like cardboard. I mean, let's face it. A lot of us want our diet to not just be fuel. We want it to be fun. We want it to be tasty. We want it to be delicious and satisfying, especially in these strange and wondrous times in a pandemic where there's a lot of stress in every aspect of our life, right? Social stress, family stress, professional stress, physical stress. There's a lot of stress, and we're looking for our diet to be some blessed relief from that stress. And so to the extent that we're not doing other things in order to manage our stress, then diet is a really easy way for people to look for a little stress relief a few times a day, sinking into a meal or a snack. And so we have to talk to people about taste, right? And we have to really understand what are some foods that you really richly enjoy today. And you can learn an awful lot about an individual based on what they share with you, depending on whether they really enjoy for example, foods that have a lot of refined carbohydrates and a lot of sugars or sweeteners. This may speak to people who have a lot of anxiety right? Where they're looking to get a hit of serotonin, right? And some literal neurotransmitter calming through the activation of GABA as well, based on sinking themselves into a handful of cookies or a nice serving of cake or pie or a sweetened beverage, right? We're looking for a serotonin hit. Ideally, serotonin with a little bit of dopamine. So instead of just a muffin or a cupcake, I'd like to have a coffee with it, right? Or some other type of caffeinated beverage so that I get a little bit of a hit of dopamine, maybe a little bit of epinephrine in order to help me focus. But I want that to be in the context of some calming. And so we often pair what I like to say, the mocha with the muffin, right? Or the cookie with the coffee, right? Or the pie with the cup of tea. These are common combinations, and people are looking to self-medicate with foods. And so when people are craving a lot of sweets, I recommend we take a look at, are there blood sugar regulation issues, especially the oh so common dynamic of insulin resistance, especially the earlier stages where there's hyperinsulinemia and people are vulnerable to episodic hypoglycemia and they're self-medicating with these higher carbohydrate foods. To what extent are people struggling with excessive anxiety or a feeling of restless stress because they are deficient in magnesium, which is an incredibly common deficiency? It's less prevalent in our soil. We have challenges from a digestive or cellular absorption with uptake of it because of common disease dynamics in our populations. Maybe people need magnesium. Maybe people have GABA glutamate imbalance issues because of lack of sufficient vitamin B6, right? There's a lot of biochemical imbalances that you can dive into. But what about if people are craving more the fat and the salt categories of foods, right? Where they feel more energized, they feel more normal, less exhausted if they're consuming salty foods, right? Especially things like French fries and potato chips, and they don't crave sweets so much. Sweets could kind of go away. These are often individuals who struggle with adrenal imbalances. One of the things that we know that adrenal hormones do is not only support us with stress hormones, but also support us with electrolyte balance. And when individuals have been undergoing a lot of multifactorial stress, one of the things we can end up with is either episodic or throughout the day, low cortisol, suboptimally low cortisol. And this can change people's electrolyte balance so that they actually have insufficient levels of sodium. It leads to increased excretion both of water and sodium in the urine because of the coordinated action of the adrenal glands and the kidneys. And so individuals, we think about sodium so often in the popular medical media as being a negative thing, right? We want to avoid sodium. Sodium's an essential electrolyte and necessary for life. And yes, people's levels can be suboptimally low. And so if they're craving the salt, not just getting it consequentially in a lot of processed foods, which add salt to try to add fake flavor to foods where it doesn't really exist because of excessive processing, and I'll get to that in just a minute. People can crave salt because they need salt, and then they get the salt along with the fat, and this also can help people to just feel more calm. And so they get an energy boost and some calming from this as well. And so we want to ask, what do people crave? Right? Sometimes people just crave coffee. Sometimes people crave alcohol, which is another opportunity for insight. If it's alcohol specifically, rather than just carbohydrates or rather than just sugars, we might want to be thinking about things like GABA glutamate imbalance that I mentioned earlier, maybe serotonin imbalances. Maybe there are issues with an inadequate intake of tryptophan that are needed to synthesize serotonin. I think in these current times, we're seeing more and more people who are struggling with suboptimal levels of serotonin being shunted down the serotonin synthesis pathway because the body is commandeering more and more of that tryptophan to go down the dominant tryptophan metabolism pathway, which is the kynurenine pathway. And that's actually where we use tryptophan in order to support our immune system, especially for supporting macrophage activity. And in the current environment of COVID-19 and also a lot of secondary high viral load activation for things like Epstein-Barr and various herpes viruses in this current times, there's a lot of tryptophan being shunted to support immune systems, and we can end up with inadequate levels of it actually being in support of serotonin synthesis. And people who have inadequate serotonin action can struggle with things like impulse control, and all sorts of addicted tendencies. And certainly this includes maybe challenges with control and regulation around alcohol, gambling, pornography, anything that might be addictive in nature. But especially with regard to alcohol, you want to be thinking about these particular dynamics. Sometimes, indeed, people can crave alcohol because they have yeast overgrowths in their microbiome in their body. So we want to use talking about food cravings as a really useful piece of information, because here's the thing. If we don't identify the root causes of those cravings and help people to actually satisfy the root cause, it's going to be virtually impossible for them to change their diet to consume fewer French fries, or to consume fewer cookies, or to drink less beer, or to drink fewer cocktails, if there's an underlying biochemical drive for their cravings. They're going to constantly feel like they're at odds with their body. This is why you as a practitioner are so essential for sustainable lifestyle change, because we have to help people get to the roots of their cravings so that they can naturally feel more comfortable and peaceful making different, more nutritious dietary change, as opposed to feeling like they're always depriving themselves, always in denial, always pushing aside what they really want, and being forced to, compelled to, shamed or guilted into consuming something healthy, right? So we've got to get to the root cause of people's cravings. Now, let's also talk about taste and palatability, especially where people are craving sweet foods, and they're used to consuming quite a bit of sweet foods, especially beverages, which is a real challenge. One of the most important things to do as a practitioner is to set expectations. Clinically, in my experience, it takes at least 2 months for people's taste buds to shift and change so that they can really enjoy only barely sweetened or actually unsweetened foods and beverages. And in our current quick fix culture, it's essential that we educate people about this so that they don't have different expectations unknowingly and just assume, all right, I gave it a try to not drink soda for 2 weeks and it's not working. I hate water, so I'm just going to give up. It's not going to work for me. It's too hard, right? This is where setting expectations is super essential. When we let people know that this is just going to take a little while and it requires some patience and some discipline. And the way in which to be successful is to not try to make overnight change. Most people are not well suited for overnight change at all. Cold turkey stopping of something they love and embrace as part of their lifestyle just feels bad, evil, negative. Why would I do that? Yuck. It's too hard. All of these things that might lead someone to quickly dismiss a powerful opportunity to improve their health foundations. So we have to set expectations. At least 2 months, often 3 months, in order for taste buds to get used to savoring something unsweetened. And taste buds do take time to change. Actually, is one of the reasons why introducing children to healthy foods early in their life is so essential, so that their taste buds actually get used to them. Children naturally have more taste buds for sweet flavor, and particularly strong rejections of bitter foods. This is an evolutionary advantage because in the natural world, you're much more likely to find that substances in nature that are bitter are more likely to be toxic versus substances that are sweet in flavor are more likely to be safe. And so it makes sense that children have this preference for flavor, but we can indeed help to educate an appropriate diversity of children's taste buds if we start introducing a richer variety of foods as early as possible. And a pearl I want to give all of you who might work with families or with pediatric communities is, again, surprisingly enough, this is the kind of thing that's actually been studied. And on average, it takes 10 to 15 introductions of a new food in order for a child to finally identify whether or not they might be interested in eating it on an ongoing basis. And way too many parents introduce a food maybe once and the child rejects it and they don't want to deal with the hassle of the negativity. And so they take away the food, as opposed to thinking about the victory not being whether they like it or not, but whether they try it. This is a powerful thing, by the way. You can have a workshop or a group program that you offer parents to really help them feel more excited, more motivated, and more empowered to help their children to make better food choices. I've done this with so many families before, and it's really exciting. They can do things like make a chart that has a list of maybe vegetables, say, that their family enjoys, that they would like for their child to also enjoy and benefit from on a regular basis. Put it on the refrigerator. And then every time their child tries a certain food, they get a gold star. It does not matter whether they like it or not. That's irrelevant. They know that the goal, the victory, and we celebrate it, is just trying the food, right? And I have always taught parents that trying the food is actually taking a normal size bite and putting it in their mouth and chewing it up and swallowing it. Right? And it's okay if they dislike it, right? In fact, you can even celebrate like, oh, I know it tastes weird, right? It's okay. Just chew it, swallow it, get it down, get the gold star, right? Celebrate the victory of trying it so that their taste buds can be initially insulted by it, eventually more affronted by it, eventually dislike it, eventually, okay, I don't love it, but I'm going to get a gold star, so I don't really mind. Maybe after 8, 10, 12 tries, it's certainly not going to be their favorite food, but they can learn to palate it as part of a healthy diet and can also see role model the importance of being patient with the process of learning to like healthy, nutrient-dense foods. And kids get a gold star and then celebrate, say, after 10 gold stars for a certain food, they get some sort of reward, some sort of surprise, a non-food surprise, right? We don't reward trying broccoli by giving a cupcake, but a non-food surprise or reward or gift that they would treasure. This gives them something to focus on and celebrates the trying, the experimentation with food. This philosophy works really well with adults also, but the chart, the stars, the family activity is a really wonderful thing potentially for families to embark on together. But even for adults, let's talk about the importance of step-by-step change. I have seen way too many practitioners assume that an adult, right? You're an adult. Surely you can handle, just stop drinking that soda and start drinking water. How's that working for you? In my experience clinically, it doesn't work very well at all. When people's taste buds are used to very sweet things, very bitter things, maybe really acidic things, they're not just going to switch overnight to something different. We have to make step-by-step change. And for example, if people are drinking, let's say, a lot of Coke or Pepsi, right? A lot of highly sweetened, highly carbonated, strongly flavored soda, which is quite acidic and has an underlying sour flavor. We have to think about what can we substitute for that that they may not love. It's not going to be Coke, right? But how do they begin to make a transition? And so moving from something like a super sugar sweetened soda to something like a stevia sweetened cola, right? Which would be dramatically reducing the sugar, right? Still stevia sweetened, so they're still looking for that sweet flavor, but that's okay. It's a step in the right direction. It also is trading out the phosphoric acid, right, in cola, which is also a step in the right direction. But maybe onto a stevia sweetened soda, or maybe sometimes I've found from a cola or even something like Mountain Dew, right? Just a chemical vat of sweetened beverage, maybe to something like kombucha, right? Which is also carbonated, also acidic, also sweetened, but not as much. Sometimes people move from that to maybe a sweetened iced tea that they can cut half and half with water, right? Eventually moving to maybe a sparkling mineral water with a splash of some sort of fruit juice in it, right? Maybe something like an orange juice or a grapefruit juice, and gradually reducing the juice and being able to just have a slice of lemon or a cube of watermelon or something for just a little bit of flavor. But adults are not joking with you when they say they hate water. If they have lived their adult life so far largely not drinking water, then of course their taste buds are not going to be acclimated to that. We have to begin where they are. And I think that's the most important consideration in helping people to make change. They have to begin where they are. If they love making homemade cookies, instead of saying, don't eat the cookies, eat celery. Like, we're a crazy person for recommending that. No one's going to do that. Even if you say, put peanut butter on the celery, right? People today who love just munching on celery would tell you that they had a journey for getting there, right? We have to go step by step. Maybe you're working with a mother who part of how she expresses care and love for her children is homemade baked goods. And so in this case, we need to remember the cookies is not just something she ingests. The food has other roles in her life, right? It's an activity she enjoys. It's an expression of her care and nurturing for her children. Maybe it's part of her teaching and her training and mentoring for her children. Maybe it's part of fulfilling a ritual or a tradition that her mother or her grandmother did. In the process of making dietary change, we must be very careful not to wipe out meaning in people's lives. I'd like to say, keep the ritual, just change the ingredients, right? And so maybe they have a recipe that they really love for making cookies. Okay, great. Let's cut the sweetener in it by half and add more cinnamon and more vanilla and maybe a quarter cup of nuts in order to change up the flavor a bit over time and begin to reduce the sugar. It's a giant step in the right direction, and it honors where they are rather than recommending a change that is so challenging that the average person is just going to get overwhelmed. And unfortunately, they may or may not tell you the truth about what they're actually doing, because lots of times when we tell people they need to change their diet or we give them certain recommendations and they couldn't do it, their reaction is not so much that we're crazy and unrealistic for recommending it. People have a lot of guilt or even shame around dietary change that they've been asked to do that they just haven't been able to accomplish. And shame is never a useful emotion in the process of sustainable health change. It's just not. It doesn't send people in any positive direction. If anything, it leads to more self-medication with mocha and muffin, right? In order to help people to move forward. And so we want to be very cautious about step-by-step change. But beyond the notion of taste buds, we're talking about the concept of overwhelm. And so step-by-step change, beginning where people are, is essential. Moving away from beverages, if people really honor convenience, and today maybe one of their favorite dinners or lunches is a frozen microwavable burrito. Yeah, we could do a lot better than that in terms of nutrition and certainly getting rid of a lot of additional artificial chemical additives. But if people are eating a microwave burrito and everything that represents to them, what do you think the odds are that they're just going to suddenly stop doing that and roast salmon and saute organic broccoli in extra virgin olive oil on their own stovetop tomorrow? I would say the odds of that are about zero, because the person who is microwaving the burrito may know very little about cooking. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of us as practitioners really need to get realistic about. We are a good solid 2 generations now into a wealth of people who have no idea how to cook. People who were taught to feed themselves or feed a family through largely microwaving or largely eating out or doing takeout or home delivery of fully prepared meals. And so the average person does not know how to saute foods. They don't know how to make a stir fry. I think being able to select a good series of cooking videos for healthy food, maybe doing a cooking demo video yourself if it's your passion, can be a really powerful thing to do. You can have, again, on your online social media groups for your practice or in workshops, you can have people share cooking preparation tips and quick convenience tips with one another. We can recommend that people make small step-by-step changes within the arena of what they're used to. So let's say someone who let's actually talk about takeout. Let's talk about fast food and restaurants for a minute, because this is where this is particularly challenging. If someone is used to going to a fast food place and getting a burger and fries, again, they're not going to make their lunch at home and take it in a bag, right? So looking at where they usually go, what else is on the menu? I can't tell you how often I've been grateful for the fact that McDonald's actually sells a salad. Is it an awesome salad? No. Do the salad dressings still leave some concerns? Yes. But is it a giant step in the right direction? Absolutely, right? And so thinking about how do we honor where they are, maybe looking at other menu options and the same places that they normally go so that they keep some convenience, but then can begin to work on step-by-step change. In fact, I would say if you have the opportunity ever to substitute anything for French fries, that would be a fabulous place to begin in terms of making change. Simply because of the huge amount of refined carbohydrate, dietary starch, low quality, highly oxidized refined vegetable oils, all the advanced glycation end products and other pro-oxidant species that are found in fried foods, but especially high in fried potatoes. I could go on and on and on, but if you have an avenue, in fact, I did a talk one time for a mother's group that was literally called First Address the French Fries. And people thought that was hilarious, but it was a powerful platform for education about what's actually in our food. And especially when we're talking about something that is omnipresent in modern meals, is some kind of fried potatoes. With restaurants or takeout, we can begin where they are. You can actually give someone a homework to look at the online menu for places they routinely go. And on the other side of some education, what did they think of as maybe a better substitute? Sometimes in restaurants that have massive portion sizes and everything has huge side orders of French fries or potato chips or pasta salad or rice with this huge carbohydrate overload, people can do quite well by ordering from the sides menu, right? Get a side of some sort of protein, like a skewer of grilled shrimp or a piece of fish, and then maybe a side salad and some other side vegetable type of thing. But even in terms of people cooking at home, simple, easy steps, like beginning with frozen vegetables, not fresh vegetables, because maybe for you and I, the notion of purchasing fresh produce and cleaning it and preparing it seems straightforward. But for a lot of people, it's totally overwhelming. Even how to use a good knife, for that matter, even to acquire a good knife so that chopping is not just a frustrating circumstance. I'm stunned at how many people have decades old, incredibly blunt knives in their kitchen. No wonder they don't like peeling and dicing and mincing for food prep. But frozen vegetables, even buying their favorite frozen organic vegetables while they're on sale and stocking up and keeping them in their freezer. One of our practitioners, a member of our team, has had amazing success just by giving someone the SMART goal, the challenge of consuming a bag of frozen vegetables every day, right? Whatever you want. And encouraging them to simply begin to getting more vegetables in their diet, which in addition to get beyond the French fries is another second powerful place to begin in terms of just increasing vegetable intake. It can also be a powerful way to begin to crowd out other choices that people might make in the name of convenience. Vegetables generally contain a lot of fiber and a lot of water, which helps us to feel full and satisfied, and is especially essential in today's modern Western diet that doesn't have a lot of fiber. And so we don't feel as full. We're also not nourishing our microbial friends and our microbiome with a super low fiber diet, and we're likely courting dysmotility and constipation. But that's another video for another day. But if a low fiber diet is much more likely to leave us hungry, leave us unsatisfied. And so introducing more vegetables can be one of the most effective ways for countering people's fear that they're gonna be hungry. If they're hungry often and they're really struggling with that, my clinical experience is that boosting vegetables is most often an effective tool for making a diet more satisfying. And the secondary option behind that is actually increasing healthy fat, which can also reduce carbohydrate cravings. But the simple act of microwaving some frozen vegetables, right? Please do not microwave in the bag. Please tell people not to microwave things in plastic bags. But it's easy enough to take them out of the bag, put them in a glass bowl, put a paper towel on top, and you can microwave it. And maybe drizzle some olive oil or a favorite salad dressing on top, maybe a good quality peanut sauce. And to be fair, if their taste buds are not acclimated for bitter flavors yet, they may need to put quite a bit of peanut sauce on it initially. That's okay. It's a giant step in the right direction. So we want to help people to make step-by-step change by beginning where they are and thinking about SMART goals. I mentioned that earlier. SMART just means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So that we're not talking about making massive transformative change in their diet overnight, but maybe the simple act of setting a goal for a week of what they're intending to do, or a 2-week goal or 2 goals, right? Not 20 goals, maybe just a couple dietary goals at once. So it doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels motivating. People have tools. It doesn't feel like something permanent yet. It just feels like a challenge, something to attempt, something to explore. I used to run a group program for people who had type 2 diabetes, and there was always a weekly goal through the entire 12-week program. Add a new vegetable to your diet this week and eat it 3 times this week. And so by the end of the 12 weeks, and people did this, they celebrated it. It was wild how much fun they had with, okay, this week I added Brussels sprouts and I found out some really bad ways to eat them, but I found some good ways too. And let me tell you about it. It was just 1 vegetable a week for homework, right? And it gave them something to focus on, something to share, something to build community with and laugh about, to feel like they weren't the only person they knew who was trying to eat healthy. But to build a community. And so we talked about taste buds, we talked about overwhelm, we talked a little bit about convenience, but I also want to talk about community. The reality is the average person in our societies and our communities does not eat a healthy diet at all. I think there's a strong truth in my friend Pilar Gerasimo's book about you have to be willing and able to be a healthy deviant in today's society in order to have a sustainable, healthy lifestyle that naturally repels disease. Because it is not average. It is not typical. The last thing you want to be is normal in our societies today. Unfortunately, if you're looking to avoid or reverse chronic disease dynamics. And that's an unfortunate truth and something that we really have to educate people about. But the reality is people can change their diet. They can actually like what they're eating. They can find things that they can palate and prepare and afford. But if they're the only person they know who's trying to eat more healthily, and they don't have any community, they don't have any support. There's people, their friends sort of make fun of them or joke about, that cardboard that you're eating, these kinds of things. People will turn away from a healthier diet and how it makes them feel simply because they feel isolated. They feel lonely. They feel criticized. And it's amazing how any one of us making different choices upsets someone else. It's almost like their ego is thinking, really? Who are you to get healthier, right? I don't like how that makes me feel. Your choices reflect badly on me. And it's fascinating to me how the human ego can get upset with someone else's choices, even when you're not talking about it, even when you haven't said anything. You're just showing up and eating something different, right? These are the kinds of things that's fascinating. And I think it speaks to the fact that there's often an underlying belief, there's an underlying knowing that maybe we could do better around food. But as long as we're ensconced with a whole bunch of people who are also indulging in unhealthy food, we feel secure. We feel like, that's my tribe. And okay, we don't eat healthy food, but I feel accepted. I feel seen. I feel included. We've got to start creating communities of healthy deviants that I believe medical and health practices are optimally positioned in order to facilitate. And this may be you as a practitioner, it may be someone else in your practice that sets up these kinds of activities and in engagements. Again, they can be workshops, they can be classes, they can be online engagements. You can contract this out to other practitioners via referral. Maybe you can contract them to offer them in your practice. It is astoundingly powerful in increasing engagement by simply offering community. People don't feel alone. They're in a Zoom call or in a room with 8 other people who aren't perfect either, but oh my gosh, we're all in it and we're doing it together. And suddenly I feel normal. Suddenly I feel like I actually have a community where we're a little tribe of unicorns trying to do the right thing. People need community. And I want a shout out here for companies that are offering the opportunity to do these types of things for individuals, right? There are a lot of health coaching, certainly practitioners, but also companies, right? Companies like MyMe that are trying to facilitate this on a larger scale. Companies like Heal Community that are doing this via virtual groups that are connected to specific medical practices. Groups are essential, especially after people have already made change and now, though, they need to maintain it. And it needs to become normal for them. It needs to become normalized in their day-to-day functioning. And that can be incredibly challenging for individuals. The fifth reason that I want to bring up is the fact that we need to acknowledge that people eat for many, many more reasons than hunger. And this is one of the biggest reasons why dietary change is hard. Because we eat when we're bored. We eat when we're stressed. We eat when we are restless and agitated, and maybe we've been static too long. We eat when we're lonely. We eat when we're angry. I have said to clients so many times, food is the perfect lover. Of course you're drawn to it, right? Food always looks good, it smells good, it's there for you any hour of the day. It doesn't argue with you, it doesn't fight back. It gives you exactly the pleasure you want when you want it. It's easy. Of course you choose it. Oh my gosh. No wonder people struggle with self-medicating with food in terms of habits. Food is the perfect lover. And to the extent, again, that we don't address the underlying need that food is fueling, people are going to struggle to make sustainable dietary change. And this is where the food is not about the food. I mentioned earlier some of the biochemical dynamics that can be involved there, but there are a lot of emotional, sociocultural needs that can be involved there. And I think it was back a good 20 years ago that the Institute of Integrative Nutrition introduced the health coaching world to the concept of primary food. And that the food we eat, that we chew up and swallow, that gives us all of these nutrients. When we think about what humans crave and what humans so often are taking into their bodies and their lives in order to feel fueled and to thrive, the food we eat with nutrients in it is really secondary food. If we think about what are the primary foods that we crave, it's not French fries, it's not cake, it's not beer, it's love, affection, sex, adventure, risk, freedom, autonomy, silence, solitude, acceptance. All of these things that are way harder to get out there in the world, seemingly harder, harder to get out in the world and take action to do what we need to do in order to bring these things into our lives. And to the extent that we don't find out what they are and actually begin to take steps, even small steps in the right direction of giving ourselves the primary foods that we need, yeah, we're going to keep looking at that sexy lover food over there and keep consuming it because it's easy, it's cheap, it's there. You can do it behind closed doors if you're ashamed or feel guilty about what you're doing. And this is a way in which we've got some really complex psychology involved in our eating. And so this is where engagement with a practitioner that creates some space, either one-on-one or in a group, for people to really start investigating, what do I really want? What am I really craving behind the scenes that food may just be an easier alternative for, that I really need to get at the roots of? But in terms of actually making the changes, I mentioned that beverages, right, especially super sweetened beverages, are a powerful place to begin. The other thing I mentioned is vegetables, especially if people are having issues with satiety, can be a powerful place to begin. The third, what I have seen to be most effective place to begin, is with breakfast. Because of course, our energy, our focus, our feeling of satiety throughout the rest of the day is highly influenced with what we consume first thing in the morning, right? Do we skip breakfast because we want to have longer overnight fasting, but we really don't have very efficient fatty acid oxidation in our mitochondria because we don't have enough L-carnitine, and so that's not really working for us at all, and we feel logy and sluggish and brain fog in the morning? So it's a time to change that up. It's a time to address the root causes, right? Maybe people consume primarily a carbohydrate dominant breakfast. Maybe it's not super sweet, but maybe it's just mostly carbohydrates, and they find themselves hungry at 10:30 in the morning. And that could be because they didn't get enough calories. More often, I find it's because that breakfast for their unique body just didn't have enough fat and or protein in it. And so changing it up, doing a breakfast experiment, maybe talk about 4 different breakfasts that they could try for a day or two each, and to make notes about how did you feel right after you consumed it? How did you feel 2 hours later? And how did you feel 4 hours later? So they can actually learn and journal, and there's no judgment. It's just 4 breakfasts where they get a chance to discover, okay, wow, I thought I would feel great eating this, but man, I feel nothing compared to this other one. Sometimes an experiment allows people to open up to things that they have just discarded or assumed would not work for them. But if we paint it as just an experiment for a couple of days, they're more open to trying it. We also can get proficient with swaps, right? And we could talk a lot more about this. In fact, we're going to be diving deep into it in our food webinar for SAFM students later this week. All of the different creative swaps, right? If people love and crave tortilla chips, what might you recommend instead? What about pasta? What's going to work for them instead? What about chips? Right? I mean, what can we substitute? What are some of these progressive step-by-step changes that folks could open up to? I want to end today again just by thanking you for joining us. And if you don't already currently focus first on food, right? And the essential, the non-negotiable component of improving the quality of not just the nutrients, but the information that our food choices communicate to our bodies about the status of our world in order to support epigenetic activation that is more resilient to disease. I encourage you to start prioritizing that. Start finding a way that works for your unique practice to bring education, inspiration, empowerment, and community around food to the people you love. They don't know how to do it themselves. They just don't. We don't have that supportive culture around food in most of our communities today. And like I said, most people think they are eating a healthy diet, at least here in the US. And we know that's not true. And we know that when people know better and when they're supported, they do better. And that can make all of the difference in the extent of the health effects, the outcomes that they actually are able to achieve and sustain.